So good morning and welcome to this session that's part of the Healthcare and Life Sciences track at TC17. I'm Andy Day. I'm the Senior Director for Healthcare and Life Sciences. I've helped establish the Healthcare Business Unit at Tableau and responsible for growing the business worldwide. So one of the things I often get asked is what's driving? Why is Tableau seeing so much of adoption in healthcare, right? And one of the answers I come up with is Tableau is so easy to use that even doctors and nurses can use it really well. And so exactly 2 years ago, we had a presentation from Mount Sinai where an interventional cardiologist moonlighting with Tableau at night after work with their denials management data uncovered $125 million in value, which even the CFO's office had not seen. Today, we have an even more formidable story. We have another doctor, in this case, intensive, let me get that right, a pediatric intensive care physician who's actually saving lives of newborn babies using visual analytics. I think you heard Adam refer to Dr. Acuff in the keynote yesterday. So today we get to hear the story from her. And we're very honored. It's personally, I consider it an honor to be able to introduce her. So Dr. Barbara Jo Acuff is a pediatric intensive care physician specialized in cardiac critical care and practices in the pediatric ICU at Texas Children's Hospital. But just 4 hours down the road from me, I live in Dallas, and this is in Houston. She's a huge thought leader in this area and actually uses visual analytics from Tableau not only in her publications for all of the analytics, but actually uses it at the bedside to treat these newborn infants, often born with cardiac defects. And that's the story we'll hear from her. And she's been responsible for establishing a formal self-service visual analytics program at the Texas Children's Hospital. So with great honor and pride, I welcome Dr. Barbara Jo Acuff and have her share a fascinating story.
Thank you, Andy. Well, thank you so much. Honestly, it is my honor. I'm privileged to be here today to speak to you. And Andy, thank you very much. And the Tableau community has become my community. And I'm very honored, honestly, to be here this morning to share a story that I found myself in. And it's really fun to share. So I hope that you find that's the case too. So what is a doctor up here at Tableau 17 conference talking about? Why do I get to talk to you? And I'm hoping that you can follow my story today. I do need to explain what I do. I am a pediatric cardiac intensive care doctor, which means I take care of some of the most fragile patients in all of the hospital. And I actually am a professor, assistant professor at Baylor College of Medicine as well. So I do have teaching responsibilities, publishing responsibilities as well. So we're busy there. And today I'm hoping that you can understand what I do every day and how we've used Tableau to make a difference in the care we give our patients at the bedside. It's quite a journey. It's a tangled one, and I'll try to untangle that for you. I need to start with an apology, and it's not always that you start a presentation with an apology. But first, I drink a lot of coffee. So as per usual, I've had a few today. And I'm going to try to be slow, but if I do get quick, I will try to slow it down. I also don't stand still or sit still very well, so I also apologize for that. But the biggest apology is I don't speak your language, and I'm not so sure that you speak mine. Medicalese actually can get quite complex. I've tried to translate in my presentation, but I do apologize if there are a few things that seem a little more complex. I have sat in some excellent presentations during this conference and have been lost in translation. So I will apologize if that happens here. So Texas Children's, just like Andy said, is in Houston, right in the dead center of the medical center, and it's a big place. Everything's bigger in Texas. It's a freestanding children's hospital. We actually are very busy, and very recently, we're named number 4 in the country for pediatric care, and all of our subspecialties are ranked in U.S. News and World Report. 11,000 employees, and certainly 2,000 of those are all board certified in some specialty of pediatrics. Well, let's drill down from that giant hospital into my heart center. So the Texas Children's Heart Center, I am very proud to announce, has just been #1 in the country, above Boston, and Children's Hospital Philadelphia, actually, where I was trained, and have taken the #1 seat in the Heart Center for the care of children born with heart defects or with acquired heart disease. It's a busy, busy place. It's also the largest cardiac intensive care unit in the country at 33 beds. The census average is 35, just so you know. We squeeze them in there. There's lots of people who take care of these patients, respiratory therapists, nurses, child life specialists, nutritionists, you name it. They're in our heart center. Outpatient cardiologists help us with our kids after their recovery, and they're part of our heart center as well. We're very proud to be #1, but that does come with responsibility. First of all, you want to keep staying #1 over Boston. Boston. But as it is, everyone's looking to you now. Everyone's looking at our heart center at Texas Children's Hospital for what innovations we're doing, not only in the care of children who are born with heart defects, but also everything else. What are our quality metrics? I know a lot of you here work in quality. How are we doing it the better and the best? It's big responsibility. Now let's drill down into my ICU. So now we're at the bedside, and heart defects are actually quite common. About 1 in every 120 births is we find a heart defect. And about 1/4 of them are going to need some repair in the first year of life. In a crowd this size, there's a handful of you that if you don't actually have a scar down your chest, then you actually are quite related to someone who does, a neighbor, extended family member who has gone through a heart defect repair. Even in the United States, it's the leading cause of death and illness by birth defect. So we are very busy, and it's very common, and we're doing very well in the care of these children, but it can be quite complex. As you can imagine, we take on the most complex heart defects, and we kind of refer it to cardiac origami sometimes. How these babies are born with such jumbled hearts at times. It can be quite scary and comes along with some pain to recover from these surgeries. It's multiple machines are attached. They're we say they're wired to the max. We also have collections of monitors and wires, hundreds of drug doses, and I'm not exaggerating. So people say, oh, doctors are not data people. You guys all call yourself data people. Well, I beg to differ. In all honesty, at this bedside, I could call it a data hurricane. I have data from this machine, this machine, this machine, this machine, this machine, this machine, and the baby. And I need to make these decisions in a blink of an eye. I need to actually analyze, collect, integrate, aggregate, filter in a blink of an eye in order to prevent this baby from having a cardiac arrest. So in our little computer minds, and in all of my trainees' computer minds, we make those decisions. But at the same time, I need to know how to do it best. We collect this data. What are we going to do with it? And so 95% of the time, I'm at the bedside taking care of children with complex heart disease. 5% of the time, I'm trying to do it better. Can I collect the data? Can I make decisions? In all honesty, I think this morning they said something that insight is retrospective. So we need to collect the data and understand it and how to do that. And so honestly, we're not data scientists. We don't have DBAs at the bedside with us, but we do have passion for doing it better. What happens after data hurricanes? Sometimes you get in a flood. So if you guys all remember a few weeks ago, this is Harvey. This is where we live. This was one of the highways. But we don't want to be flooded with a hurricane of data. So our mission and my passion, just like I said, it can be scary and painful. My passion is sedation management. So how can we do it and keep kids comfortable? And where does that passion come from? So this is baby Sydney. She was born perfectly healthy as expected and after a perfectly normal pregnancy. And at 9 days of life, stopped eating so well, became really cranky, kind of limp, ended up in our emergency room and then in my ICU with a horrible heart failure. The heart just was not formed strong enough to keep her alive. Well, what do we do with baby Sydney? We list her for heart transplant. And at Texas Children's Hospital, we have a very active heart transplant program. We need to get her through that. She's attached to lots of machines. But I'm happy to say that after heart transplant, she's surviving, and actually just a little while ago, we celebrated her first birthday. And I got to see her eat cake with her big sister, and now she has the world at her fingertips. She could grow up to be whatever she wants to be. In fact, maybe a software engineer, developer on stage sometime. I think so, right? So truly, this is where our passion comes from. We can't just have the kids survive. We need to have them survive well. Now we know how to fix their heart. We know how to transplant their heart, but they really need to come through well. So the quality sedation practice would include free of pain, free of anxiety, good sleep. Let's keep all those devices on board here, like I said, wired to the max. Decreasing oxygen consumption, that's medicalese for not letting the heart work too hard in the midst of all this. And certainly, I don't really want them to remember it. Now, a lot of our parents will ask us to also take care of this for them because they're at the bedside, but obviously I can't take care of them. Nobody wants to remember it, but as it goes, that all comes with a cost. So we talk about side effects of all the medications we use, but truly the care that we give these patients, a very complex care, can actually come with some toxicity. Yes, we're trying to heal, but across our country and across actually the globe, even in Europe, we're finding that there's some toxicity that comes with it. So first of all, we use a lot of different drugs. The polypharmacy causes exaggerated symptoms. It can cause PTSD. Who would have thought that drugs to try to keep a kid from remembering can actually make them have PTSD after? So long exposures, just like adults, just like you read in the papers, can cause addiction and withdrawal symptoms that can be quite dangerous to a baby with fragile heart disease. So delirium, and then really recently neurodevelopmental outcomes. So like I said, we can get them to survive the defect, the surgery. But then what happens later with all these exposures? And even the FDA, just in December 2016, comes out with a communication that said the sedation drugs that our kids are exposed to, actually under 3 years of age, are going to have effects on the developing brains. Like I said earlier, these kids can't wait 3 years to have their hearts fixed. We have to fix them for early. Sometimes in the first 30 days of life, they're undergoing a surgery or two. My 3-year-olds sometimes have already had 3 or 4 surgeries. So we can't avoid the sedation drugs. We need to just know how to do it right. And when we do it right in the ICU for these fragile patients, we have found, and people have published, that you can reduce the length of stay. The unplanned events don't happen. When you have addiction and withdrawal, you can decrease it if you do it correctly. And this is our goal, decreased exposure to some of these medications and the toxicity that comes along with our healing. Does that make sense? So, and I know, like I said, quality people might recognize this kind of map. We want to assess the practice. We want to make those changes, and then we want to be able to measure improvement because knowledge is applied information. So we also want to be sure to put that information and knowledge to our providers so that they can make great decisions and so that we can have better outcomes for our patients at the bedside. Let's go back into the ICU. There is actually a patient in the midst of all of that mess. And I have had a parent come to me and say, this is just like an airplane cockpit. How do you know what's going on? We've been trained to look at all those things, but we have to know where the data is coming from. And at a baby's bedside like this, medications can be given by pump in very tiny increments hourly. Sometimes a teaspoon an hour, sometimes 1 cc, or a fifth of a teaspoon over an hour. So those continuous medications are running. And then we give those intermittent drugs too, as you can see up there in the right-hand corner, as needed drugs. But a baby like this can create rows and rows and rows of data within just a few hours. And that in medication administration record and EPIC, as many of you know, really just lists. And you can create incredible amount of data in just a few hours. But then we still have questions, right? What drugs are we using for this baby? How many doses have been given? What's the total cumulative dose that's going to have effect on their neurodevelopmental outcome? Like I said, I can do this, but I want to do it well. Let's come on a night on call with me. Come into my world for 1 moment. This is a baby boy, actually more like a 4-year-old boy, labeled very difficult to sedate. Nurses hate taking care of him. He's rocking all over the bed. The parents are upset. The patient's upset. There's no satisfaction with taking care of this patient right now. And you get called to the bedside. What are we going to do? Well, smart decision making will look at the data, right? I want to know what drugs have been used, what worked, but then if I open my EPIC, my MAR, my medication mission record, it's just rows and rows and rows. That data is inaccessible to me, and it's certainly in the decision I need so that this child doesn't have any dangerous event that night. I need to know right now. And so this is not accessible data to us, and this is where my frustration came from. I need to know. I need data-driven decision making, and it was not available to me. So we started a project called the STAR. The STAR project stands for Sedation Targeted Assessment and Review. I thought it was adorable. Plus the primary colors, we work in a pediatric hospital. It's very fun. The STAR program, the project, actually then is multidisciplinary. It's the doctors at the bedside, nurses at the bedside, respiratory therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Everyone who's going to come in the bedside to take care of that patient really has a say in how well they're sedated. So, okay, don't judge, because this was my fair attempt at looking at historical data. I told you I had rows and rows. We extracted it from the MAR. We thought it was brilliant. We really did give it a try. We took all the intermittent doses. We took those continuous pumps delivering hourly medications, tried to count them up. Okay, like I said, don't judge, because it even got worse. I tried to filter it. Just look at the babies. Look at those under 30 days. We think those are the ones that are most affected. Oh, I was getting lost. The numbers at the bottom, I'm trying, right? I'm not kidding. I really tried with paper and pencil. I had read publications that weren't using any kind of fancy product, and they were using an army of medical students to do calculations by paper and pencil. I literally was trying to figure out how I was going to bribe an army of medical students in my hospital to come and do this by paper and pencil. Then Excel, I certainly did try to, fumbling. In all honesty, it just crashed all the time. I mean, even if I limited it to 500,000 rows, Excel will just crash. And then it becomes expensive because I want to punt my computer across the room. It just doesn't work. I was really becoming quite frustrated. In fact, I called it data paralysis. And you know what happens when you have data paralysis? You give up. And I had many, many colleagues before me who had given up on this. Guess what? We'll go back to the original myth. I'll use Adam's myth statement yesterday. You know what? Things are just fine. We're doing great. Remember, we're #1 in the country. That's, we need to really shed some light on this, friends. So the same old thinking leads to the same old results. Well, if you know anything about me, and my husband of 25 years knows me very well, I don't take no for an answer. So I went looking. And so some of you may recognize these things, and I apologize not giving you personal credit, but I got a little kind of a whim about Tableau, really around the coffee shop, where I spend a lot of my time. ICU coffee shop. That's, if you want to find me, that's where I am. Right, Justin? So truly, I'm on Google, because that's what you do when you have a question. You Google it. And so I found on the Tableau website that Wells Fargo is counting dollars down to the red cent. Every single red cent Wells Fargo goes through, they're using Tableau. I found out that our Texas Rangers, using geographic location, looking at not only their ticket stubs, but we're following beer sales and hot dog sales and sending the right vendors to the right place in the stadium. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? The Heinekens were going one place, the Miller Lights to another. So even Wall Street, we wouldn't tolerate anything less than our brokers actually knowing every minute of the day, every dollar that goes through them. We wouldn't tolerate this. And truly, I do want to give credit. I totally cannibalized these off the Tableau website right here, so just so you know. All right, so here I am. I want to use this tool. I think that if someone cares so much about dollars and cents and hot dogs and beer, why can't I use that resource for my patients? It makes sense. I went to my IS department. Do we have business informatics? Yes, we do, kind of. That was the answer, I'm not kidding. So certainly not in the hands of the providers. Certainly it's not coming out of the IS department. You can request it from IS or IT, you know, they're overburdened, we'll get to it eventually. But what's most important is if I give them the measures and dimensions that I want to look at, I'm going to get them weeks or months later, and they're never going to be what I want. Very frustrating. Don't take no for an answer. So another kind of quality slide, right? You have data. I need a powerful, quick tool in order to understand it. Then I can make improvements. I was looking for the single version of the truth. How can I shed light on the truth? Or am I going to just live with the myth that we're doing just fine? So Tableau to the rescue. Truly, I downloaded the free trial onto my laptop. I put my Excel spreadsheets on it and was flying, really excited. Then purchased my own desktop version with my own money, and I put myself through fundamentals class, and I sat, not kidding, with the ExxonMobil guys in the fundamentals class, and I was sliding and clicking. They were calling them pills, so at least I understood that part, right? But truly, it was sum of profits. It was customers, it was items, and all the time sitting in class, I'm translating it. Babies, doses, totals, medications. It could work. So that's where we went. And honestly, that 5% of my time cannot be with paper and pencil. It needs to be quick. I need to know the answers right now. Data-driven decision-making cannot be arduous. It needs to be quick, and it needs to be powerful. And that's what we found with Tableau. So self-service analytics. Could we honestly possibly look at our historical data yearly, monthly, weekly? Could we truly know by hour, even by provider? Could I filter by my colleagues and know what their practice is compared to my practice? If someone's doing it better, I want to know. I want to do it like they do. I want them to do it like I do, but that's okay. So truly, this is where we did. And we could, even down to the red cent, just like Wells Fargo. So I'm going to show you a few visualizations. I'll explain them as we go. They're not that complicated, but they tell me a wealth of information. The first one certainly is just those doses given intermittently by the nurse at the bedside, not the continuous pumps, but how can we count them? We can count them by year. And this particular graph, if it was your broker, you'd be really happy, right? I mean, you might even just be planning your next vacation. But these are doses given to patients by year, indexed by patient. This was not, hey, we're doing just fine. This was shedding light on that myth. Who are our top players? You guys might recognize this, but you can see fentanyl, an incredibly powerful opioid. You might be reading about it in the newspapers right now. We use it actually as one of our top drugs. Midazolam, also known as Versed. These might be recognizable names. Across the top, we have lorazepam, Ativan, morphine, methadone. These are our top players. Some of us felt that maybe these were the ones we were using most. Guess what? These are a lot of doses. You know, we're talking 82,000 doses. And I can show this now. And I can play with it. I can understand it. I can be in it. I can drill down. See how exciting this is? No, seriously. I don't need the Army of Medical students anymore. Even by looking by year, month-over-month change, percent change year-over-year, you can see that there's been some kind of practice where we feel necessary to give our patients more doses. Why is that? It's hard to know. So drill down some more. Let's look at per month. What these are looking at, the top one is fentanyl, that powerful opioid I talked about. The bottom is midazolam. Those are our two top players. Most important to look at for kids who are on the ventilator, so those that I'm trying to keep the quietest. These two drugs you can see are increasing by over year, but the volatility, that month-over-month change, why do we have so much volatility? We have 24 cardiac intensive care doctors working in a giant ICU of 33 beds with 35 patients there tucked in. This is incredible volatility. This doesn't lead to good standard of care. They're different one week to the next week. This is difficult to try to explain unless you put this in front of my partners. Does that make sense? So we have found to be laser focused in what I could probably try to change in the practice first. How about we look at the number of bolus doses used in the unit, right? We've seen these metrics, we've identified these metrics. Let's just try to find that one, drilled down, found it. Let's stay laser focused. The next visualization was surprising to a lot of people. What we did was we took the doses by hour of the day. So if I can explain this to you, of course, fentanyl and midazolam are on there. Fentanyl's blue, midazolam orange, and the hours of the day go across the bottom. So for the far left is midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. You can see aggregate data over 5 years' time. This pattern is very distinctive. You would have thought this would be more random. There are distinctive spikes, 1, 2 standard deviations above the average for the whole day, right? At 4 a.m., 7 a.m., and 7 p.m. I don't know if anyone works in an ICU, but there is a little bit of a rhythm to the ICU, right? I'll tell you now. At 4 a.m., all of our patients have x-rays done. At 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., the nurses give sign-out to each other. What is hardest to do is to give sign-out when a patient's awake. So we knock our patient out, we can give sign-out. So this is a pattern that was never recognized because we're just doing fine, right? Maybe this is something I can affect change. If you notice too, the nighttime dosing is much higher than the daytime dosing. Well, why is that? Well, you want to be quiet at night. Is this following the patient's needs or is this following the nurse's behavior? Is this following the rhythm of the unit or is this following the patient? If I have that question, I can ask that question to my data and filter for adults. So this is just filtered for adults, and you can see that the pattern disappears. It becomes much more random because the adults can self-report. They can tell you I have pain. They can tell you I need sedation. Actually, everyone needs something to go to sleep at 9 o'clock. Do you see the spike of Versed at 9 o'clock? Very funny. Remember, this is aggregate data. This is not just one day in the ICU. This is 5 years in the ICU. You know, looking at all this, looking at this data in aggregate has really spelled out the pattern of practice. It's identified a metric. It has given me data-driven decision-making. And so that's why I'm so thrilled to be using Tableau. So what are we going to do with this information? Well, certainly I'm ready to dive deeper. And that's the beauty of Tableau in any data set, in any data source, is that you can drill down and find out more and more information. So what did we do with this knowledge at Texas Children's Hospital? I take this back to the STAR team. What are we going to do for sedation targeted assessment and review? Well, we certainly have targeted assessment. Now, what are we going to do for it? So we started with staff education. Showing them this data enlightened everyone. It's like shining a bright light in the dark. This is what we need to do. Our surgeons were not satisfied with that data. Our nursing leadership was not satisfied with that. So now we can offer some standardization and try to decrease that volatility and introduce standardization and assessment tools at the bedside. So that's what we did. And then once that systematic change is made, what's the beauty of Tableau is that you can have ongoing visualization and show the improvement as often as we want. And this is, you know, again, another quality arm of our project is to improve. So we have now truth. We have our baseline, we make our changes, and we go in our quality loop and make feedback, right? Because these metrics will drive change at the bedside for our most complex heart patients. This isn't something that you're meant to understand, but it's a validated assessment tool that's available that will tell our, what level of sedation a patient is in. So it gives the nurse a communication tool. It gives us all the same language. And so this education was actually quite extensive to teach this sedation tool, this assessment tool, so that we could all have a validated score or scale. 0 being very calm, cool, and collected, even on most machines, even on a ventilator, even on wired to the max, like I said, you can be calm, cool, collected. 0 would be our goal. Any minus numbers, they're much more sedated to the point of comatose. And positive actually is agitated and upset. So this gives us a goal we can actually order. The doctor orders an SPS of 0. If you're above and below it, that's how you can act. This gives us a communication tool. So I want to bring you back to that one viz I showed you with all the volatility, the month-over-month increases. Now, fentanyl at the top, midazolam at the bottom. Remember this. So this is what the metric we had identified. And I am pleased to tell you, if you look at your far right there, highlighted is when we started introducing SBS to the unit. And for the first time in 5 years or more, 6 years more, we have a decrease in fentanyl and midazolam. This is dramatic, right? Because everyone were doing just fine. We're #1 in the country. We were not doing just fine, right? Show the truth, makes a change. Show the change, people will continue because they know it's the best thing for their patients. That, like I said, is right where we started SBS, and that new validated tool. So I'm going to bring you back to that variation by time of day, right? By the hour of the day, you guys recognize this one. Like I said, the significant spikes at 4 a.m., 7 a.m., 7 p.m. This is our new early results, Q1, Q2. Blue is Q1, orange is Q2. The rhythm is still there. That pattern still exists. It is the rhythm of the ICU. However, you can see that it's decreased number of doses given in that hour of the day. So it's the same as I go to the coffee shop every day, the same time, right? But instead of ordering the 3 espresso shots, I only order 1. It's better for me. It won't last, but it's better for me. Truly, our metrics and our hope was to decrease by 20%. We wanted to keep our patients safe. We wanted to decrease that perhaps inappropriate, maybe misinformed use of rescue bolus doses for our patients at the bedside. And so I can show you that fentanyl is down by 12%, and benzodiazepines or midazolam are down by 26%. This is excellent news. What's actually more impressive is the acuity of the unit in these 2 quarters, Q1 and Q2 of 2017, the acuity has been the highest in all of our history. And we have not had increased safety events. So this is excellent for our patients. I do truly believe that as we go on to measure more and more metrics, we're going to have excellent news for our patients at the bedside. Patient satisfaction, parent satisfaction, and actually nurse satisfaction have just skyrocketed. It's very exciting to be part of this. And it really all comes with enlightenment, right? Showing light onto the truth. So what's another part of our of this Tableau project is actually we just showed you all those quality things, knowns, unknowns. So we knew what we wanted to look at, but we didn't know what it was going to show us. But in the research side of this, there are unknown unknowns. And so truly the data has really revealed things that we weren't actually looking for, which is another beauty of Tableau. So not only have I been able to publish on the business informatics and using these tools at the bedside, so these are all publications that I've listed here in scientific journals and actually presented at national conference. The top one, the variation night, day is not night, I presented at a national level conference and I had people swarming to me. What tool are you using? Where can I get that tool? I know that's happening in my unit, but I can't just tell them, I need to show them. And people taking pictures of the visits and taking it back to their units. So that's very exciting. People are very hungry for this tool. The middle one you can see too, and also Norwood procedure. Well, that doesn't mean much to you, but it means everything to me because those are actually our most complex. Those babies are born with half a heart. Not 2 ventricles, 1 ventricle. Not 2 atrium, 1 atrium. And we do a palliative surgery, multiple surgeries, and we keep them alive, and they do really well. In fact, I have a 22-year-old patient who just came back from a ski trip with half a heart. All their procedures are done early on, but what we're finding is there's impacts to our habituation we're causing. The patients are getting addicted with our exposures, and they're having impacts. So we're able to look at that now because I can filter the data on the Norwood procedure and those who are exposed to methadone. I'll show you some of that in a bit. The top one was this tool everyone says it works as fast as you can think. Well, we wanted to look at another procedure called the atrioventricular canal, AVC repair, in those with chromosomal abnormality, trisomy 21. The myth is that they need a lot of medication, and no one wants to take care of that patient because it's going to keep you up all night. It wasn't true. We have filtered for that procedure. We filtered for the chromosome anomaly. We counted cumulative doses, number of doses needed. Not true. We busted the myth. So if I look at the narcotic habituation, this is some of the visits that we showed and actually are in the publication that's in manuscript right now, that the length of stay was affected if you had this neural procedure and you were exposed to methadone. We held for every other variable. They were just as sick. They had the same procedure. But yet, if you get exposed to methadone, you're going to be in the hospital much longer. Then, even just looking at the ventilator time, you can see that the ventilator time was much longer. So these collaborative efforts, I have people now at my door. I need to match your sedation data with my such and such data, with my neurodevelopmental data. Actually, we're just putting an abstract to the American College of Cardiology that says that patients who are exposed to high cumulative doses in the first 3 months of life have lower neurodevelopmental scores at 6 and 12 months. And we can look at 300 patients and 80,000 doses, rather than previous publications that were looking at 60 patients and that many doses. It's dramatic. It allows you to look at more, make more inferences, and have much more insight. So what are we doing now? What are we going to do in the future? This is all well and good, making some changes, making cultural changes in my ICU, but what else can we do? So this is not meant to be understood either. It's very colorful, pediatric hospital. But truly, these are roadmaps that we have now developed. They're kind of a roadmap that a nurse can jump on with her patient and be instructed like a recipe clearly on when to give rescue bolus doses. So this is informative rather than just, I think my patient needs a dose or I want my patient to have a dose. This is actually roadmaps. Clinical guidelines are actually in a large part of our practice. We've been able to develop this, and we'll be able to look at the data. I'm happy to say the rollout for this is Monday morning when I get back. So that's one of our next projects. So let's go back to that night on call at that patient's bedside. Remember I told you I don't have any insight to those hundreds and hundreds of rows that are getting churned into the medication admission record? So maybe we can look at individual continuous profiles, individual sedation profiles. This is something that has never been done. It's incredibly useful. It brings you insight because now if I come on call, it's hard to see, but at the bottom is actually days, ICU days, January 2nd through January 9th. So this is a week, right? But if I come on call Thursday, I have no idea what this kid has seen. I can never have the time to go through hundreds of rows. But now this can actually graph, visualize each daily dose. Fentanyl blue, midazolam orange. The hills are maybe you can recognize as running sums, but actually cumulative doses. So I can know what the doses were the days before and what the cumulative dose exposure has been on that day. This bringing insight straight to the bedside. These are those intermittent doses. They're colorful. They can tell you how many they got. You can see, and this is not very useful visualization. I'm learning. We're getting there. But I can tell you that the arrow in the midst of that mess is when a patient gets a line infection. Some of you know them as CLABSIs. Well, that's because the nurse is going in the line 100 times that day. 21 doses overnight is not appropriate. This is what we're trying to change. So truly, I can know that when I come to the bedside with the visualization. So this, we are working on. It's bringing insight, and it's going to tell me compliance with the clinical pathways, and it acts as a clinical decision support tool at the bedside. So what does that look like? So this is beta version, way, way beta version, but that's okay because I'm not great at dashboarding. I went to the class this week. But if I can filter by patient, then I have the continuous infusion there. I have the bolus doses on the bottom. The cumulative dose is there. The day of surgery can be there. We're working on it. But it's going to have a lot of information that actually can be right up on the Epic screen, buried into hyperspace. We're extracting the data from Epic, and it can be in layout for the desktop, the tablets, or even through Haiku on our phone. So Epic has a phone application called Haiku. This is embedded in there. You can have a phone. You can look at this on your phone. My fellows will have no excuse to not know what their sedation profiles for their patient are. This is incredibly useful. It can have best practice alerts, warning flags, thresholds. The neurodevelopmental paper I was just telling you about shows that if you are above 80 for a cumulative dose, your likelihood of having to need some special help in school goes up incredibly. So these thresholds and best practices are going to be in our very near future. And I'm very pleased to say we're getting closer. So truly, like I said before, when we do sedation practice perfectly, correctly, we can reduce ICU length of stay. And Dr. Frazier, our chief of surgery, would really like to have an enhanced bed management. 162 patients are waiting for heart surgery at Texas Children's Hospital. We're not in a third world country. I have 33 beds. We're going to 40 beds. Brand new tower, May 2018. 40 beds won't be enough. We do still need to do this correctly, have our patients have excellent outcomes, and be safe at the same time, and then also an enhanced bed management. So we're working on all these things, and I think truly by enlightening, by using Tableau, by showing the data, we've made cultural change, and all of this is all in process. The metrics are going to try to change. So truly, as a summary statement, you can see that us using Tableau enables those specific targets. We can personalize and improve sedation practice in our cardiac ICU by visualizing those complex administrations and other quality metrics in graphic form. You know, and can I remind you that I'm actually just a physician? I've had no informatics training. That was my apology early on. We've had success. It's been very fun. And so truly these analytics, these insights are going to make a difference for our tomorrow's clinical outcomes. So just to finish here, you know, I know lots going on, but you know, this was us a couple weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, Jim? You know, this is what we've come through. The resilience of Houston is quite amazing. And so just like I said, our success story is to be continued not only in our ICU, but all of our neighborhoods as well. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm really pleased to tell a story. You can see my passion, and I think it's an ongoing story. I'll have more outcomes to share later on.
Let's offer a huge round of applause for Dr. Hekaf. Don't know about you guys, but the story gave me goosebumps as a father of a child, right? We have time for a few questions. Any questions from the audience? Yeah.
I do see lots of improvement using Tableau in the medical field, and I am in the medical field for 10 years, and I'm in the Houston area also. So how long did you took like from reaching this stage since you adopted Tableau? Means like, what is the time period or timeline we are looking here?
That's an excellent question. I sat in my first fundamentals class, I want to say December 2015? 2015? So we're now, what, 18, 19 months? 18, 19 months. Mm-hmm. From 0 to 60, exactly. I don't sit still, as it turns out.
Hi, this is Subhash Saab from SUNY Downstate Medical Center. I see a gold mine for you.
Yeah, I see a gold mine.
The way you showed the data with lower sedations over the years, and now you have the previous data. Now you showed the data with the lower sedations, right? So, and you talked about one of the report by neurodevelopment study, and similar. You could go ahead and look the data previously what you have. As those patients with the neurodevelopment or any behavioral data, and next 6 months, you compare similar behavior or neurodevelopment data with your lower sedations, and that could be your New England Journal of Medicine paper.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, like I said, I have a lot of colleagues who have passions in other parts of our practice who really want to come and meet me. Like I said, chromosomal anomalies or different specific procedures or even how we treat patients with ECMO. Everyone wants to improve the practice, but we really can see how even our sedation practice affects it, but everyone wants to be able to shed light on their data just the same way.
Hi, I'm Christy Gomez. I work at Memorial Hermann Hospital in Houston.
Yeah, right down the street.
I just had a quick question about the beta version. Is that going to be live, or what is the frequency? How are you guys going to interact that on the floor?
That's an excellent question. So right now, getting the EPIC through Enterprise Data Warehouse into Subject Area MART, getting it now embedded in. So it's truly what we're hoping for is a Q24-hour refresh. Every refresh at midnight. We could really have it in near real time. We're a little far from that right now, but even just to have a weekly report on sedation practice would be way more than we've had before. Even if I had a monthly at this point, I'd be pleased. But truly, the beta version, the overarching goal is even just a 24-hour refresh. So that at rounds at 6:30 in the morning, and we are at rounds, and we literally still go bedside to bedside with all my trainees, I will have the sedation profile there to be discussed.
Hi, my name is Link, and I'm with Netflix. So I'm not too familiar with the whole healthcare system, but I'm curious.
I'm familiar with Netflix, though. So.
Oh, great. Always love to hear a fan. So I'm curious how you're thinking about kind of organizing this kind of practice, right? This idea of introducing analytics to the broader organization. Are you thinking about potentially seeing this as a centralized function, or should it live within the different kind of departments, each owning their own set of metrics?
I mean, that's an excellent question, because certainly collaborative multidisciplinary efforts would be best. And certainly we're trying this in the critical care department first, but the oncology department has already been on my doorstep. They want to know how to do this as well. Do we share patients between? Rarely, but we do, mainly because their medicines kill hearts, so just so you know. But truly, we do share patients between. And I've seen some beautiful work that some of you in this room have really done about patient flow from here to there and everywhere. I'm trying to get our IS department to adopt Tableau. And so by showing them this success, having adopted in the critical care department, I'm hoping that it does what people have described this whole week as that viral kind of idea. And I am so jealous. I really do covet some of the things that you do to show CLABSIs and CAUDIs and all that kind of stuff. I want that. I want that for my patients. But right now, this is what I'm working with, and it's actually been quite a showcase in our institution.
Matt Dolter from the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics, and I'm just a finance guy, so we speak different language.
Never just a finance guy. I wouldn't be standing here with a job without the finance guy.
So I was wondering just about your struggles. Like, it sounds like you were rogue and you just got a Tableau license yourself.
I like rogue.
The hospital didn't adopt Tableau at that time. Is that right?
So I was actually asked to write a paper about shadow IT in hospital institutions, and I didn't know what shadow IT was until I realized I am shadow IT. But so truly, they had already invested in another competitor, and they also didn't have any knowledge on that competitor's program. And so I did a little bit go rogue because they weren't giving me what I needed. And I wasn't satisfied with no. Like we heard last night, I'm not satisfied with that answer. We really do need to find this. And then I have convinced our CMIO, a very good friend of mine, happens to be a critical care doctor as well, but he realizes we need self-service analytics. It is really true that our IS department is perfect at data governance and data harvesting and extract. They're really good at that. They're not good at what I do, and they don't know how to interpret it. Put the data in the hands of people who know how to interpret it. You give it to me safely, I'll know what to do with it. But there's fear. Just like we've heard, there's fear. The gunslinging, I think, was what was used yesterday. But honestly, if I can convince them that the governance is with them, the certifying data sources that we heard about last night on the dev stage, that would actually solve a lot of my problems, because they can certify the data. And then we can play in it.
Hi, I'm Yanan Zhao from the Inter-American Development Bank. I'm more of an economist, so not really speaking the language either. But I was wondering, have you faced any challenges when you were trying to promote the dashboard to people, like make them use it? And have you thought about any sort of training things or training website for people just to adapt to the new trend? Thank you.
That's an excellent question. So right now, we don't have our beta version at the bedside. We're very close to getting there. That's first. And so anytime I've showed my colleagues in faculty meetings the dashboard, what do you want on it? What would be most useful to you? What information do you need? And they all have great ideas. And so we'll settle on one and then we'll change it up as we need, just as you guys do with your dashboards. But there isn't any problem with adoption. They love this. It's really not in my department. It's really not in our ICU. It's actually that outside kind of that needs to be convinced that we're going to have this. So there is a lot of struggle there, and I'm been fighting the battle, and I'm persevering through it. And Justin can can attest to it. It hasn't been an easy thing, but when you show this kind of data to the chief of surgery, to the CMIO, to the CEO soon, Mark Wallace and I have a meeting, they're not going to be able to deny it. And so then it'll roll. And I've used the analogy, I'm setting up all the dominoes, right? And that's making a really beautiful picture. And I just need to push it to get it to roll. But we are still using to make practice changes, obviously. We're making cultural change, obviously. We're making publications. People are looking at this. So, we are already moving forward. We're not letting them drag us behind. We're really moving forward, making innovations, because these are children. They're not going to wait. And I will not continue to do the practice we were doing before, now that we know what it was.
Hi. Thanks again for this presentation. It's really inspiring.
Thank you.
And it sounds like we were able to use the analysis to impact, or see insights into behavior, conscious or unconscious, and you were able to, specifically tell what was happening at specific times of the day. And that's what's really powerful. And I can see that being applied to, any practice that impacts the care of your patients. What were some of the examples? So once you found out what people were doing, what did you tell them, to not do or do that reduced, the doses that they were giving patients?
That's an excellent question, too. No, truly, just raising awareness by showing those visualizations, specifically the variation by time of day. So those hourly use of the rescue doses was enlightening. And so I went in front of the Heart Center with Dr. Charles Fraser in the front row, Dr. Dan Penny, these are our big leadership men, and all the leadership, nursing leadership. And I showed them that. They also said, we can no longer do it this way. Raising awareness, I think, first, shedding the light on the data was number one. I think that we probably were decreasing our doses by just showing people it wasn't fine. Second, we instituted the cultural change. And if anyone has done that, either in quality culture or any other culture, even my family culture, you can't change anything easily. And so we had to continually put the data in front of people. What was the incentive for them to change? Certainly it is their patient, it's the patient care. But I can tell you that I can go by provider. And as the clinical pathways are instituted and implemented on Monday, I can show you which provider is doing it and which isn't. They didn't like that. But, we don't have to show that. But what is the incentive to have cultural change? And really, that's what I think I put in front of them.
Hello, I'm Ravi. So I come from marketing analytics world. So the world, and again, thanks for inspiring presentation. The reason being, so I worked for Johnson & Johnson. So we used to do NRX, TRX kind of model, pharma model, as well as some revenue analytics kind of model. When today's business world determines to target physician with getting the right incentives and right promotion in the journals and targeting the right fission to increase the NRX, whatever you discussed. And at the other end, mostly from the hospital side, increasing the bed days of the patient so their revenue goes up. That's the world I was part of. So we do such kind of analysis, how to make a profit. But the work, what you showed, is at the other end, how to ensure the patients to be less with the doses. So my question here is there any way, because I do see there can be more options to add, is there any way where you can add an additional metric to your analysis, like reduce the bedtime or something like that? So what would be such kind of metrics where you want to club this data visualization to some sort of advanced analytics where you can give an bliss to the patient?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear, mainly because I'm trying to fund this project with grant money now. So if anyone has ever funded a project with grant money, you can understand how frustrating that is. If I listen to this very smart gentleman in the front, add a metric that shows I'm saving millions for the hospital, or that I can get Dr. Fraser's patients off the waiting list, I'm pretty sure that I probably won't need the grant money anymore. But right now, I'm still in the trenches. I'm still trying to beg the grant money so that I can get it moved forward. You know, I bought my own desktop version, but I need to get the server. I need the server, and truly, I do. So I hear you loud and clear, and I do believe that. My passion is at the bedside. I need to bring a partner perhaps beside who understands the finances and really try to find that metric, and I think we probably... Yeah, okay, excellent. Yes, excellent.
Hey, I'm Nick from Stryker, and thank you for this incredible work. It's really awesome. I have sort of a two-part question. The first is, has anybody else started developing dashboards along with you in your unit?
Not at this moment, but the PICU, our PICU, which is our cardiac intensive care unit, is separate from our PICU because we're so huge, and I'm pretty sure they're at 75 beds now, just so you know, as intensive care. And I think 2/3 of those patients are ventilated, on ventilators. And so that's a very busy place, but there is a doctor there that has done the same thing I have, bought his own desktop, working through it, getting the data prepared, and honestly finding some good abilities and opportunities for dashboarding down there. So within the critical care department, cardiac ICU, pediatric ICU, you know, we're still in the ICU setting, but it's a wealth of data. We have everything. We could do anything. We could look at any data now that we have some opportunity and knowledge of how to use Tableau, even the little bit I do. So the opportunities are huge for dashboarding. And I was at one of the sessions yesterday, 134 dashboards. I would love 134 dashboards. You know, we'll get there. Yeah, well, and I'm hoping that I could, you know, be on the podium in some period of time soon that tells you we're there.
So the follow-up question is, my brother and sister-in-law are critical care docs. Is there anything in particular about you, or that you would, that someone could look at themselves as a doctor and say, oh, maybe dashboard development is something that I can do to enhance my practice or enhance the unit? Is that something that's for everybody, or is there something that is particular about you that you would encourage other docs to look for in themselves?
You mean what makes me so freaky?
Well, yeah. How do they know? How do they know if they're also freaks like you?
You know, in all honesty, I kind of stumbled on Tableau. And because I don't take no for an answer, and because I really care about my baby Sydney's and, you know, all of our patients in our unit, I think that I pushed through. It helps that I'm married to a computer geek. It also helps that my son is an applied mathematics major at Carnegie Mellon. Okay, sorry, bragged. But truly, you know, so, you know, our dinner conversations might be a little bit different than some. It happens to be. But no, it really is, I found a tool that worked. And I'm telling you, when I present this at medical conferences, I need that. I'm struggling. And, you know, Excel is not giving me what I need anymore. I can't look at 65 patients. Our publications, year N is 60. Nobody's going to publish that anymore. We're looking at Tylenol doses. We're looking at 9,422 Tylenol doses. The last paper that was published out of France on IV Tylenol doses, they looked at they did looked at 69 patients. You can't do that anymore. It won't, you need to increase. So I think if they're in academic medicine, in critical care, they need this tool.
Last two questions.
Okay, so I work at a children's hospital in the IS department. So I build dashboards for doctors.
Can you come work at Texas
I
Children's?
know. So, but what I see is it sounds like you started off and you just kind of wanted to look at drug doses, but you didn't know what you were looking for. So it was like this exploratory analysis. So when I go to do that, I don't have the medical knowledge to know what I'm looking for.
You just defined my whole problem.
Right. So we have a tough time getting doctors to maybe ask us questions because they don't know what they're asking. So if your hospital, loved what you're doing and signed on everything, would your ideal say that I want my doctors to be using Tableau to be able to do this exploration, or would you want an IS department who could support you that you could come to, because kind of both aspects have pros and cons to me. So just from your perspective, what would be kind of your ideal state?
I think there are definitely docs like me that are freaky and want to get in the data and that are publishing and want the truth. There are some docs who maybe not so interested in it, but they're going to be very interested in using my clinical decision support tool. And some of those exist. Cincinnati has, some on kidney, and there definitely are some, but they're very interested in using the tool. So if they're in data and publishing already on data, they're very interested in using Tableau. But you wouldn't convince everyone. And I think that there are some that would need more hand-holding. From IS. So my ideal world truly would be IS department doing excellent data governance and getting me the data streaming automatically, refreshing beautifully, but also having some knowledge about my headers. What are my measures, what are they? And do they make sense? And so, more than just a data dictionary would be. And, that in an ideal world would maybe be Willy Wonka land. But truly it's, smart people who work in children's hospitals, my IS department doesn't ever come in my ICU. Would I love them to walk through the ICU and see what we do and see what they're affecting? Exactly. And that's what I did with my Tableau people, actually. I brought them to my ICU, right, Justin? Brought them to the ICU. This is what I'm looking at, and this is why. And so, you would get buy-in from the IS department if they knew what you're doing, and you'd get buy-in from the doctors when they could see how easy it is.
So this really builds on the previous question. You speak as a physician trying to convince your IS department. I'm actually coming from the opposite direction. And while we've had some great adoption, like you, we've also had a lot of resistance where we've built dashboards that we thought were fantastic and were really showing a lot of interest, but the physicians just couldn't get their minds around, this isn't how I look at data. Do you have advice on convincing physicians the value of this type of approach?
Make it their idea.
How?
Right? I mean, I learned that when I had a 2-year-old. If you make it their idea, you're much more likely to get compliance. I mean, if you give a dashboard to a doctor and it doesn't say what they want it to say, or it doesn't read the way they need it to read, then they're not going to adopt it. But if you say, what measures are you looking at? What is important to you? And I will give that to you. I think that you'll probably have a happier relationship. But it's culture change. It really is. Just like when we all were forced to do EMR, were we happily writing in terrible handwriting all of our orders? We were very pleased to do that. But then when we saw the value of EMR, how efficient it could make us, and how safe it was for our patients, it was adopted. So there is a bit of culture change, but and at the bedside, it's going to take things like this. It's going to be me telling your critical care doctors over there who are in data or in publications, it's going to be in the journals that we can do this. So I'm excited to share it. You can tell. I don't mind. I'll tell anybody because it really has made a difference for me, and it's going to make a difference for doctors when we get there. And so I'm really hoping that I'm not the only freak. That people there'll be many more, and there already are in my critical care department. There really are, and my fellows. I have influence on trainees. That might be the answer as well, right? My interns, my residents, my fellows. they're now going to be at the bedside using a clinical decision tool that they helped develop. And so they're going to go on to their different hospitals when they get hired, and they're going to demand that of those hospitals. And their IS departments are going to say, you're a freak. I'll be, yay. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're
The
welcome.
huge
You're
round of
welcome.
applause
You're welcome.
for Dr. Acuff. It's really transformative work, right? And we hope that'll proliferate across the thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.